Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, Israel records glowing initial results from its vaccination campaign. Though meanwhile, authorities are quick to shut down hopes of getting out of lockdown anytime soon. And finally, Eurovision 2021 is back, and Israel's long-awaited song choice has been set free. Starting with breaking news, a Palestinian suspect attempting to stab Israeli soldiers stationed at a military post near the Gitai Avisar junction. One of the IDF troops nearby reportedly blocked the assailant's multiple attacks, however, while the commanding officer then fired upon and neutralized the suspect. And other than the suspect, who has since been reported killed, no other injuries have been claimed. And now for some great news. With over 3.8 million Israelis now vaccinated, 1.2 million of whom have gotten their final and second doses, early results of Israel's aggressive coronavirus vaccination campaign are in, and outlook is good. The nation's still frozen with bated breath, waiting to see whether Israel's coronavirus vaccine program will live up to expectations. Well, now, with the help of Israel's Maccabi HMO, first insights into the effect of Pfizer-BioNTech's vaccine are available. Results showing that as of last week, just 20 of the 128,600 citizens who'd been fully vaccinated with both doses of the drug have been infected by coronavirus. That's 0.0001%. And their symptoms have all been mild to moderate, ranging from headaches to coughs, weakness, and fatigue, but none getting a fever above 38.5 Celsius or 101 Fahrenheit, and none requiring hospitalization. Meanwhile, results reflecting in the public, health authorities reporting a 60% drop in hospitalizations for citizens 60 years old and up in the 3 weeks following their first doses. This means that by all accounts, the infection rates are dropping faster than what Pfizer had predicted. That said, it's not yet clear whether these benefits are being felt equally across all segments of the population. It's also possible that some of the recent drops in infection and hospitalization are more to do with more people following lockdown regulations, the newly vaccinated especially. Experts warning that despite the good news, we should all continue with caution. According to Pfizer, when administered correctly, their vaccine is 95% effective against coronavirus 28 days after recipients get their second doses. So on a related note, while many are rightfully celebrating the recent victories in the fight against coronavirus, Israeli authorities are rightfully reminding us that we're not out of the woods just yet, and that what we do now still has a major impact on getting through this pandemic sooner rather than later. Hannah Rifkin with the details.
Professor Nachman Ash, Israel's current coronavirus czar, warning Monday night that between the constantly changing behavior of the virus and the dangers of reopening too quickly, this may not be Israel's last lockdown.
אנחנו רואים בימים האחרונים ירידה במספר המאומתים. מקדם ההדבקה, אותו R מפורסם, ירד ל-0.9. יחד עם זאת, יש מספר נתונים שמדאיגים אותנו. על השאלה האם זה הסגר האחרון, כששאלו אותי לפני שבועיים, שלושה, אמרתי קרוב לוודאי שכן. היום אני הרבה יותר זהיר.
Meanwhile, Health Minister Yuli Edelstein similarly saying that we will be living in the shadow of coronavirus for a long time, adding that there is an atmosphere of this is it, just one more push, but this is not the case. This as hundreds of Israelis rushed onto last-minute flights to get home before new restrictions set in, including a full lockdown of Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion airport.
Come back early because they closed the airport, so I immediately call my travel agent and change the booking, do the PCR testing in 3 hours, which is a lot of money, and here I am. That's what we can do.
I came from New York to Israel, and I was supposed to fly tomorrow, and when I saw that there is a shutdown in Israel, I just rushed and bought tickets 24 hours before, and also rushed to New York, where next to my house, and I did the COVID test, and basically just rushed to the airport to come before they shut down the country, basically.
In any case, with an infection rate still far above comfortable limits, health authorities now preparing two different outlines for potential lockdown exit strategies. both detailing a very slow, three-phased opening of the economy. Professor Ash explaining that the exit must be slow to avoid another wave of infections, especially in light of quickly spreading mutations like the UK variant, which is now running wild in Israel. Experts estimating that the UK variant accounts for nearly half of all new infections in Israel, and of which 40% are kids. The new overnight infections also bringing the total active cases then to 74,059, 1,179 in serious condition, and the death toll nearing 4,500.
So what exactly is the effect of the new mutations, and how can we best prepare for them? Joining us to discuss is Professor Manfred Green, Director for the Masters in Public Health program at the University of Haifa. Professor, thanks again for being with us. Now, we have seen a rapid spike in infection due to the UK variant, especially in kids now. How will this affect Israel's morbidity and the rate of the spread of the virus?
Well, maybe today I'll talk in a more positive tone, even though there's all this increase in disease. The virus mutates, and we know that it mutates. It's one of these RNA viruses that mutate, and we'll see mutations all the time. What we really need to do is make sure that our vaccination campaign goes as fast as possible, and it's going very well. And the public have to understand that they should be cooperative and, maintain social distancing and masking, even though I know we're under lockdown, but, take extra care. Because as long as the virus is circulating, as long as it's going around, even if it's not causing much disease, in other words, not much serious disease, it's going to mutate. And that's one of the issues we need to deal with. So basically, we need to do the right things, and I think we can do that.
Are the facts that you just laid out, should they be factored at all into the exit strategy, for opening the economy?
I would say so. I think that there's obviously this pandemic fatigue and a lot of things. I think that I would suggest the following. We know that we're going to go out of this with a lockdown at some stage and this gradual change. But I think that we need to then give the public more positive things to do. And one of the things that I would suggest is, for example, to prepare for a different kind of environment where we can make sure that we are social distancing and so on, for example, in the schools. And I think that should be a tremendous emphasis on now reorganizing the schools so that there are ventilated rooms, much more space between the students, and thinking creatively about how we should do this and involve the parents in the planning.
All right. Now, as with many new treatments and new illnesses, there's a concern that the virus, and in other cases, typically bacteria, will become resistant to the treatment. That there will be some sort of Israel variant caused by the fact, or that will be resistant to the vaccines because so many Israelis have been vaccinated. What do you say to those concerns?
Well, first of all, it's not an issue of treatment, because we're talking about vaccines. It's not like a bacteria, or at least in this particular situation, viruses can also become resistant to treatment, but we don't have too much. But for the vaccine, our concern certainly is that the virus will be less neutralized, shall we say, by antibodies produced by the vaccine. But these vaccines can be modified, and we can give boosters. So that's also something that's not beyond us. In other words, and the companies are preparing for that. So, we go again back to the thing. If we have a high percentage vaccinated, lower the circulation, we're going to then be in a much better situation to deal with the mutants and not create new mutants.
All right. So now I want to kind of talk once more a little bit about the current lockdowns. Israel is closing all the borders, especially the airports, as Netanyahu called it, a hermetic seal around the country. Is that going to be enough, or are we really going to be seeing this virus hanging around us, as Health Minister Edelstein said, for the foreseeable future?
It's going to be around for a long time, but we can live with it and we can deal with it. And I think we need to encourage the public really to do the simple things. I know there's a tendency to say, well, if we don't do anything or we do a lot of things, it's not going to make a difference. But there is that middle road. And I see it where I'm around, the fact that a lot of people are not wearing masks the way they should in public places. And having these gatherings, we can do that, and we can do it in a way which makes our lives much better and much more normal. So I think, and combined with the vaccine, I'm convinced that we're going to get into a much better place.
All right, Professor Green, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure as always to have you.
Okay, all the best.
Speaking of Israel's vaccination drive, while on the one hand earning global praise, pushes to go get vaccinated are now earning red marks on social media. Facebook deleting a post by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and then suspending his official channel's chatbot function for a week over violating the social media network's privacy policies. Apparently, the since-deleted post requested personal details of those over the age of 60 and who have not yet gotten vaccinations. The message then tries to persuade these people to go and get inoculated. And the chatbot, which has since been suspended, had been sending this post in private messages to the channel's 2.5 million followers. Facebook Israel, in response to its actions, explains that no content which asks for personal medical information may be posted or shared on the platform. All right, moving on, we're getting closer and closer to our fourth round of Israeli elections in 2 years' time. And most of the various parties are all still trying to refocus and rebrand. New political polls on Israeli Hebrew news media showing that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party and Yair Lapid's oppositional Yesh Atid party are both gaining strength and popularity ahead of March elections. Likud expected now to take home 32 Knesset seats to Yesh Atid's 18, and followed now in third place by ex-Likud Minister Gideon Sa'ar's New Hope party, which is predicted to take on 14 seats. As for Benny Gantz's Blue and White party, still reeling from recent losses of its members to other parties, the faction is trailing at the bottom with 4 seats, just over the electoral threshold. Curiously, though, while also still at the bottom, the Labour Party is stirring up new interest. This after Knesset member Merav Michaeli has taken over the top spot on the Labour Party list, following party primaries just last week, in which she earned 77% of their vote. Following Labour's division of the Zionist Union faction 2 years ago, Labour has consistently lost strength in the Knesset, and this in spite of cycling now through several different leaders as well. Michaeli saying that her mission is to rescue and rebuild the party to its former glory. All the changes aside, however, final faction listings are not due for another several weeks, meaning more divisions and unities may yet be on the horizon. All we know for certain is that at least for now, no party would have a clear path towards successfully forming a coalition. Now, in a surprise turnaround, it seems that after years of cold on-again, off-again ties with Ankara, Turkish President Erdogan is looking to rebuild trust and friendliness with Jerusalem. But why the sudden 180? And how should Israel be responding? Here to discuss is Dr. Nir Bohms, research fellow at Tel Aviv University's Moshe Dayan Center. Dr. Bohms, thank you so much. Now, why the change and why now?
Well, President Erdogan is not in the best of shape. The currency, the lira, had dropped over 30% this year. He has been having issues all around the region, but more so, he's been having issues with Washington. President Trump has been somewhat more accommodating to his policies, certainly to what he had done, in Syria and with the Kurds. President Biden is not expected to do the same. He has been a staunch rival of President Erdogan. He is not accepting the Turkish policies. And there are a number of issues on the table, including additional sanctions and additional measures that the U.S. can take dealing with an ally that's supposed to be an ally and a NATO ally that is acting very much against the interest of other allies in the region. And therefore, President Erdogan is saying this is the time to recalculate, and perhaps the road to Washington actually begins in Jerusalem.
So what is Erdogan ultimately hoping for? What's the end game? And what has Erdogan done recently to put his money where his mouth is?
Well, what Erdogan did is a number of statements and also sending his head of intelligence, Fidan, for some meetings in Israel. This is significant. These are significant developments. He also accepted moderate response to the deal with to the normalization agreement with Morocco. This was just a few months ago, we had a very different response when it came to the normalizations with the UAE and Bahrain. So he is indicating that there is a change in tone. Another interesting proposal that was sent was regarding the gas pipelines connected to the East Med, and all of a sudden we have a Turkish proposal. Perhaps you could use the Turkish infrastructure and use Turkey. Not something that Israel would likely do, but it's certainly an interesting route that may be cheaper in many ways. and that's another show of goodwill. Sending an ambassador to Israel following over 2 years when we did not have an ambassador here. These are all significant developments that seems to indicate that Erdogan is interested in a change of course. He also indicated himself in a statement that although he still has reservations about the Israeli policies when it comes to the Palestinian, we need to find a way to work with Israel to advance issues of common cause. That's, in his words, a very significant move.
All right. Well, so, I want to ask you, how are Turkish people responding to this? Because, of course, Erdogan has spent years turning the public, towards his ideologies.
That is true, and it's not yet clear how the Turkish people respond to it. But we need to remember that Israel and Turkey, prior to the Erdogan era, or really prior to the second part of the Erdogan era, really only about 12 years ago, Turkey is still considered an ally and a friend. We've had close to 20 flights a week going to Turkey until relatively recently, before the Corona crisis. Turks are familiar with Israelis, with their connections and friendships. And so I don't think that the turning of this nature would be not accepted just generally around the public. It's politics.
Well, so let's turn to Israel now, because, how are Israelis going to react? Because it's been reported that after so many years of anti-Israel rhetoric, partnerships with Iran, funding for Hamas, that Israel can and should be playing hard to get. Is that your understanding?
I believe that is correct. Israel has very significant and acute issues when it comes to the Turkish policies. Certainly, the hosting of Hamas, and even just recently Ismail Haniyeh, and of course Salah Harouri and others, significant Turkish support for the Muslim Brotherhood and related activities in East Jerusalem. Anti-Israel rhetoric, involvement of Turkish organizations in other parts in supporting anti-Israel agendas, the BDS movement. All of that means that in the meantime, Israel, of course, had created very significant relations with some of Turkey's own rivals, certainly when it comes to Greece and Cyprus. Israel, of course, is not going to give that up. Just because Erdogan is now speaking in different terms. Right. So it's going to be a process. I think it's constructive, and I think it's useful to have an ambassador and to have better ways to communicate. But of course, Israel is not going to just change its own course and accept all of it in open arms if really things are not going to change on the ground.
All right, Dr. Nir Bohms, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here.
All right, speaking of support from unlikely places, while Israel often expects resistance on world stages like at the United Nations, the World Health Organization's executive board on Monday has now approved for the first time ever an Israeli-sponsored resolution. And the resolution, co-sponsored by over 15 other member states, is now set for a final vote on the WHO's agenda for May 24th through June 1st. As for its content, the resolution is also the first proposal on the topic of rights for persons with disabilities, following the adoption of the United Nations Convention on the same issue. The text of Israel's resolution is designed to follow the path of and build upon the same principles that the UN Convention earlier outlined, i.e. moving away from approaching disabilities from a medical perspective and moving towards a more human-centered and social model. Moving on, the very popular annual Tel Aviv Marathon usually attracts tens of thousands of participants from around the globe. But this year, of course, in light of the ongoing pandemic, event planners had to get innovative and find a way to make it more COVID-friendly. Their solution, running together separately. Here to explain is Dean Binnis, head of digital communications at Tel Aviv Global, which is planning this year's race. Dean, thank you so much for being with us. Now, how will the Tel Aviv Marathon happen this year, and what brought this innovative idea to fruition?
So we thought how to include the international runners who's coming to Israel every year from abroad. And we're thinking that the marathon this year is virtually and via digital app. So we have come to a conclusion for the participants that this year they can participate from all over the world. I mean, they can download the app and run in their hometown. It could be Paris, it could be Rome. Wherever they live, they can run in the city they live in. So this is very special.
That's incredible. So what can you tell us about this app, for the participants? How does it work? And did you get this idea out of the blue, sort of, or were you inspired by any other race that does this?
We know that there are several marathons worldwide that use an app, a digital app for the runners, but I don't really know if they're including runners from abroad. And here we have participants from 33 countries, from Europe, from the US, and even the Emirates. People are going to participate and run the marathon, the full marathon, or other routes like the 5K kilometers and the 10 kilometers. They can choose the route they want to run. And the app actually is showing them with the GPS where to run in their hometown. I mean, if they chose the 41 kilometers, for example, they can run in their hometown the 41 kilometers, and the app shows them where to run. And also they can listen to music, to playlists they want,
which is a pretty big plus. But now I understand that there's actually a special challenge for those abroad who register and participate in the marathon. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so for this challenge, they have to, of course, participate in the race and take a video or a picture of themselves and send it to us. We want to see their creative side. I mean, they don't have to picture themselves while running, but they can take a video from their trainings or like from the unboxing thing, because they're receiving the kit, for the runner's kit that every participant gets. So we want to see the most creative, exciting videos. And the person who will win the first prize will be able to join us on the 2022 marathon in Tel Aviv. He will win 2 flight tickets and an entry to the next marathon. So this is very, very exciting.
Now, I guess my last thing, how can people register to participate in this year's marathon?
So they should enter the website, the marathon website, register for the marathon, get the kit, and then they can email us. All the details are in the website. They can email us the video or the photo of themselves, and they can participate in the challenge.
All right. Team, thank you so much for breaking this down for us. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who are itching to run and to participate in this race. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
All right, and now for our final story this evening. Eurovision was down, but it certainly is not out after being postponed to later this year in light of coronavirus. And Israel's top song pick for this year's competition has finally been, quote, set free. Israeli media announcing Monday night that Set Me Free will now be the song performed by the country's 2021 contestant, 20-year-old Ethiopian Israeli Eden Alene, the first Israeli of Ethiopian descent to represent the Jewish state at the international contest. And along with the announcement also comes, of course, the release of the first official music video for the song, featuring Eden and a backup dance troupe. Back to the competition, though, the first semi-final performance is now scheduled for May 18th in Rotterdam, with the finals set for May 22nd. And with that, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear to partly cloudy with a cool low of about 51 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow you can expect more partly cloudy skies, but with a slight rise in temperatures to an average high of about 70 Fahrenheit or 21 degrees Celsius. And now before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. And here we see the bravest of Israeli soldiers making some beautiful snow angels. That's some strength. All right, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.27 shekels to the American dollar and 2.56 shekels to the Canadian dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to visit the all-new and improved ILTV website at iltv.tv and subscribe both to our newsletter and to our new Telegram chat group for the latest updates. I'm Aaron Porras. Stay safe and healthy, and thank you so much for watching.